allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to remind everybody that this meeting is being recorded, so please silence your devices. Is there any public comment tonight? Okay, seeing none, we will go to recognition. There is no recognition. Student report.
So, hello. It's just me tonight. Caitlin couldn't make it. So the last time I saw you guys, it was Homecoming Spirit Week. So that ended successfully. We had the seniors win Spirit Week, of course. So, you know. So then we had the homecoming game that Friday night. We won. It was a really big crowd at the football game. It was really fun. And since then we've had, I believe last week was a home game, and that was the last home game of the regular season. So I think the first three were there were three that were home, and so now on to the playoffs if we're going to come home again. And then Thanksgiving game, I believe, is usually home as well. So there's also the homecoming dance, which I heard was a success. I couldn't make it, but I talked to the seniors who ran it, and they thought it was a success. There was the homecoming court, which they voted for 2 seniors to be the homecoming court representatives of the best spirit of North Andover. So that was really cool. Tomorrow there's the unified basketball game at 3:30. So that's a really awesome program that Mr. Nugent, I think, actually helped start, where there are athletes from the special ed department at NAS who team up with NAS students to come together on one team, and it's a really great atmosphere. The last game was really good, or the last season that they had was really cool to see that be put together. It's the second year in a row that's happened, so that's really awesome. What else do we have? PSATs are this Saturday, so less exciting than unified basketball, but that's something that's happening. Sophomores and juniors will be taking that test, so clearly not as exciting as that. I believe there's also a band competition this Saturday, and then school pictures are on Monday, so just kind of easing into the school year, things are really starting to pick up for most students a month in, so yeah. That's all I have tonight.
Thanks, Jack. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to approval of the minutes from September 27th.
So I'll move to approve the minutes of September 27th, 2018 as presented in the packet.
Second?
Motion made by Mr. McDevitt, second by Ms. Mabley. Any discussion? Mr. Treasy?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, minutes are approved. And now, if there are no objections, we would like to take new business ahead of superintendent's report. Or do you want to do superintendent's report first and then new business?
Either way, we
Okay.
can
Do them together.
Yeah.
All right.
I only have 2 quick updates for the
Don't look
superintendent's
at
report.
me.
And then we can get to NEASC. For the superintendent's report, really important with the gas disaster and tragedy, whatever the title is, you hear on the news these days. For a lot of our affected families, we're starting to provide transportation from alternative family housing. Down at Grogan's Field as well, they're setting up campers. So they got about 40 campers that sleep 7 downtown. There's a way to apply through Town Hall and Columbia Gas to get a place like this. It's heated and propane. But what I wanted to say is Helen asked a question last time, and I met with the town manager this week. Typically, any of these families that are displaced, we pick up the transportation cost as homelessness because they're temporarily displaced. So under the McKinney-Vento Act, we're responsible for transportation. At this time, it appears that Mr. Mailer has a line for costs like this that will probably be going to Columbia Gas. So we'll be submitting all of our transportation bills at this time. for anyone that's been displaced down there. And I'll also tweet out a little more tomorrow when I get more information about who to contact for the campers. They don't have anyone in them yet. They were setting them up yesterday, but it's going to be 50 degrees Sunday, so
Right.
40 in the 40s that night. So that's an update on that, and it's pretty exciting that Mr. Mayo has taken such a lead in the region.
Can I ask you just a quick question on that? So for some of our families, obviously, they're dispersed and not necessarily at home. I mean, what are we doing for lunches at school? I mean,
So
some of them wouldn't probably qualify for free and reduced, but I mean, are we helping with that?
So
They can't,
if you're
okay.
if you're considered homeless, even if it's temporarily, you automatically get free and reduced. You automatically get free lunch, free breakfast, free
Okay,
any programming. So that's
All right.
federal law.
okay,
So we've been working with Erica on that and making sure everyone has what they need.
okay.
One of the things that the principals and the guidance council have done an outstanding job.
Sure.
And so the showers, the middle school and high school, that whole project's still going on as well?
I-
In the mornings, do we know?
Yeah, I think there's. I don't think at the high school anyone's taking advantage of it at this point anymore. And I know that at the middle school, it was a few, but I think that's trickled off.
Okay.
What I'm hearing from a lot of folks is no one has gas, but there are a lot of folks have been able to put in an electric hot
Right.
water
Yeah.
heater just for
I
showers.
live in actually in the neighborhood where all this is happening, and a lot of people have put in electric showers. I have some friends that have hooked up a camp shower from a cooler that they put boiling water in to shower. So people are doing a lot of interesting things
Yep.
to make things work out.
So I thought I'd just update on that. And then the other piece is MCAS went home last week. Just that the next meeting we'll have the district report, and after that we'll have the principals in from each school. What's really important about this is the whole system has changed completely and utterly changed. With there's no more levels. And this is the first year that they have 2 years worth of data on the new test, that they're doing this new work. And, North Andover did really well. I think it's about 60 or 61% meeting expectations or above. The state average is about 48, and that's in both ELA and math. But the thing that's really interesting, and the thing we're going to have to do some education on for not only all of us, but for the parents, et cetera, when the principals meet with their PTOs, is that the new measure in progress towards improvement targets is what the state is looking at closely. And the main groups are around achievement, growth, progress of English language learning students, and students who may be chronically absent. So there's a whole bunch of new components, and it's pretty complex. And in fact, in typical state fashion, they're released all the information, but they're having their first webinar tomorrow for administrators to attend
To explain what it means.
to explain more. So,
Sounds about right.
yeah. With that said, I'd like to invite Principal Jackson, Miss O'Terry from the Science Department Coordinator at the high school, Mr. Nugent, the Director of Guidance, Diane Fryamuth, from the History Department, and Miss Flanagan, some know from softball, but also an excellent math teacher at North Andover High. So,
Yeah, pull chairs up.
Chairs up so we can. Marshall, someone wants to speak.
so before Mr. Jackson takes over, just, one thing, the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, it's been in business, over 150 years. It accredits all of our colleges in the region, private schools, high schools. As you know, a few years ago, we talked about here at school committee how the state was really going one way with their standards, and the NEASC wasn't getting, it was kind of going in a different direction or not necessarily lined up. And a lot of schools were thinking about a moratorium on being members or not participating. But the superintendents have worked closely now with NEASC, and folks are really back in line. And this is a really important year for North Andover High School because this is their self-study year. And the following year, there'll be a visit, typically in the fall. I think it's October for these guys. And with that, I'll turn it over. This is it's a big thing for the high school, a big undertaking. And like I said, a lot of times we have elementary in here, sometimes middle. It's really nice to get the high school in to talk about this important process. So,
I think you just told like 3 of the slides.
oh, Principal Jackson.
There's some happy people around. It's all right. We'll sit back, smile. What does this need? No. Thanks for having us, and we're happy to come in and give an overview of NEASC, what we're going to talk about today. And thanks for being our co-pilot here, Dr. Gilligan, with the slides. We'll reintroduce after, kind of talk about what NEASC is. We'll give a little history of the accreditation in a cycle for North Andover High School. Reiterate when the visit is. Talk about kind of how the school who leads the accreditation process within the school And we can list talk about the 7 standards, what they are. You guys will have details of that. I don't think we'll go into detail of all 7 standards and read that. You guys will have that there. Talk about the benefits of the accreditation process to the high school, or what we believe they are. And also go a little bit more in detail about what we're doing this year during our PD time. We're going to spend a lot of our 2-hour days focusing on NEASC in preparation for next fall. And then I think at the end, Mr. Nugent's going to talk about, he went on a visit, and we can kind of go into detail. We've had a few teachers go on a visit and talk about kind of what happens during that visit and what it could look like here in North Andover next October. Again, Chet Jackson, principal. You guys want to reintroduce? Are we good? You're good. All right. But happy. This is our leadership team, or partial parts of them from the steering committee that leads the process. So all 3 teachers who are on the team joined us tonight. Appreciate them taking the time out on a busy Thursday night. Although the weather's good to come for a visit and get and not probably miss anything fun like yesterday's weather was. Yeah. And Mr. Nugent to come by. The Association of New England. The New England Association of Schools and Colleges is what NEASC stands for. We use NEASC around there. It's been founded since 1885. It's the nation's oldest accreditation association, and characterized by its commitment to establishing and maintaining high standards for all education. There's an accreditation process. I think the district went through a kindergarten one a few years ago, and they have it all the way up through doctoral level. Accreditation relies solely on voluntary peer review process and engaging educators. For reviews, it's teachers, administrators from different schools that kind of come and volunteer to go to other schools and kind of get a lens of their work and what each individual host school prepares. So you get a nice, as unbiased as you can, kind of outlook of your schools. The self-study process, it's about 12 to 18 months. I know we started, and a few of us went on a visit last spring or last late winter to a school to kind of start this process before we work this year in preparation for our visit. It happens once every 10 years. I think we're a little bit over because of some different extensions that happened after 2007 or 2008 when that preparation for our last visit we had in North Andover. NEASC revised their standards, as Mr. Gilligan, I think, alluded to a little bit there. 2016 is when they kind of went through and redid their standards and why we had to go to kind of some committee work to see what those standards are and what the changes have been. Did I take your slides, Amy? I did. Look at that. Wow. I did it.
I've been very quiet.
You want to take mine? You want to take mine? No. All right, the visit, it's coming October 6th to 9th. Mine are actually next, so I'm not taking anyone else's slides. It's a 3-part, within there. We have a self-study, a peer review, which within the school, we bring discipline and perspective to the process. We look at different observations, different judgments. A visiting committee and peers from other schools come based on our self-study that we do. So it's a pretty much 4-day, probe into kind of what we've prepared for the school when we have the visit. We get a report back. We're able to come back with the report to the school committee. It gives us some data about what our commended areas are and what some areas where we could see growth in the standards that we'll talk about later. So I think the process is healthy for us, especially around curriculum, instruction, assessment. We get some info, on different school cultures things as well. So I'm excited for us to go through it and get that information on a lot of the hard work that's gone on over the last 10 to 12 years. That one, again, we've talked about when that is. And before we get to turn over to Kate for the steering committee, we went to our training and they asked to have 3 to 7 people as part of a steering committee that really lead the process. We have some of our administration there, but they really want some teacher leaders to kind of evolve through the process. And again, we have Kate, Diane, and Amy here that kind of volunteered to go through this and help lead us through the process. So I'll turn it over to Kate to kind of talk about what that leadership looks like.
Hi guys, I am on the steering committee with Amy and Diane. We also have some administrators that are part of our team. We're sort of the teacher leaders throughout this process. And we're sort of organizing, we're the liaisons between the teachers, the staff, and the administrators, and sort of the big bosses at NEASC who are asking this of us. So we're kind of preparing for the visit. We've just started to do some work in departments, and we're sort of overseeing that work and teaming up with some other staff members. Steve is one of the administrators, and then our assistant principals, Scott and Brooke, are also part of our team. We can hit the next slide, please. Thank you. So we are looking at 7 standards. So we are preparing to show evidence of 7 standards. And if you think about all things that make a great school, you'll find them in these 7 standards. So our job this year is to provide evidence of those 7 standards in these different groups in the building. The next 7 slides give you what each of the standards are, who we're working with as a co-chair for that standard, who's another faculty member. So we don't have to read through them. So if you want to just sort of flip through, there's core values, you'll see curriculum, instruction, assessment, school resources, community resources, really everything that builds a strong community. You'll find it in one of those standards.
So in terms of the evidence that you're putting together for this, when do you submit that?
Good question.
Okay.
Coming soon to a slide area.
Great answer.
Thank you. I will. The brief answer is there are certain deadlines that we have established for ourselves in terms of which standards are sort of easier to provide evidence. The first deadline, for example, is in November for Standard 1. We've already started working on that, but it's really throughout this school year that we're collecting evidence.
So then they review it at some point prior to them coming on site in October. It's
exactly.
not like they come on in October and
we
you
hand
guys
them,
hand them a wheelbarrow full of paper.
Exactly.
All right.
Yep. This next slide is just sort of the different standards chairs. So we are helping the standards chairs. We are the steering committee, and then there's the chairs for each standard. So the language is kind of specific and a little bit different, those roles. The standards chairs are sort of making sure that the different groups of faculty are working efficiently and we're collecting evidence. We're not just talking the entire time, we're actually producing a product. And then in the end, kind of helping put the report together. We kind of have to synthesize all of this evidence and write about it. What have we actually collected? So that's the responsibilities of the standards chairs, who we are all working very closely with as the steering committee.
And were they all voluntold that they were on the committee?
No, good question.
Voluntold.
That's a really good question.
Yeah, I sent out an email last winter-ish around there, just looking, the process is coming through. Is anyone looking to help out? And thankfully, I didn't hear crickets. I got some responses back. Good. So most importantly for these people here to play a larger role. And then as I kind of had some gaps filled, I went over to people who I identified I know would be good leaders in the process and asked them as well. So, I didn't turn anyone away though. I promised that.
But then related to that, does every member participate in one of these groups, or is it optional?
No, throughout the school we divide up. I think we went through and sent a survey out to say, give us your 3 top choices and let us know if you don't care what standard you're in.
Right, great.
From teachers all throughout discipline, counselors, even TAs are in a group.
Awesome.
Excellent.
And did you say parents also serve on these committees?
Yeah, I took at the last PAC meeting, tried to get some different parents to see. I think it's all the committees except for curriculum. They have options to have parents on the committee. So if anyone's listening and wants to email me, I sent something out. But we have, I think, 4 or 5 that I passed on to the steering committee and invited.
So you need 6.
Yeah, 6, yeah.
And there aren't parents on curriculum because you...
No, they don't identify it as, NEAS doesn't identify it as a standard that for a parent to be on. So even within their process, they kind of have different roles for different stakeholders.
And the meetings are going to be during the half days. So a parent that was going to serve on would have to have daytime flexibility.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know.
And I would just remind school committee, you may want to block out your calendar for these 3 days. I know it's early, but there's big-time school committee participation in this. Yeah. They interview all of you, so.
Oh, boy.
Let me ask this, too, about parent participation.
Yeah.
Do they have to be parents of current students? Or could they be community members?
Yeah, they could be community members, I think, in different, I don't have that actual sorting in there, but I think throughout there, we have central office people we go to for information, so I think if they're parts of the community and people that are interested, I'll definitely look and see what our structures are. We're fully inclusive, I think, in that as long as we're following the process.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about being a parent whose child graduated in
Yeah.
June, that there are people whose kids have just finished up that feel like they have something knowledgeable to share.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No, you're welcome.
That's right. So the benefits of participating in the accreditation process, this is the third time I've been through accreditation at the high school. And to be honest, you feel like you learn a lot about your school from it. I last March went on a visit for the first time to another school. And it's actually a great thing to hear from other professionals what you're doing well and maybe get a different perspective on what you think you're doing well, but maybe you could do something better. It's a better evaluation than just, I know you were talking earlier about MCAS scores.
Yeah.
Test scores obviously are a part of what people want to hear, but it is nice to see if the practices that you're involved in at school are effective. And it's a great way for the community to know that the school that they're investing in is providing what the kids need for a 21st century learning experience. I know from one of the first, and Greg can probably agree, the first time we went through the accreditation process, and I remember one of the things they pinpointed with the high school is that we needed an advisory program. And it does give you the positives that you're doing, but it also gives you a plan to move forward. And I think sometimes it's good for an impartial group of people to come in and say, you're doing great, but you could do better. And again, I just think that it's so important for the community to learn. I know you had asked about parents. One of the things that I know from visiting that's really beneficial, on the weekend when you have the committee come, they will want to interview parents. Yeah. So that would be something where you could have, parents of, recent graduates may come back and add to that if it's something where a parent wants to be involved but maybe can't make the meetings during the day, because those will occur on a Sunday or during an evening. They'll try to do that.
Great.
Okay?
Here's my answer.
Oh, here's your deadlines.
It's back to me.
It's you, Steve.
All right. So there's a lot of work to be done this year, and I think we're going to use all the time that we have, that Chet has outlined for us to prepare. So basically, there are 7 different reports that all have indicators, so 7 different standards, so they end up being 7 different reports. There's a whole bunch of indicators of what the committee is going to be looking for that we're all trying to find evidence for and support through our writing. It all gets synthesized into one big self-study, so that when the committee, so going back to Andrew's question earlier, it's yes and no would be the other part of that, is that the wheelbarrow full of information is in fact, sometimes it's the first time they're seeing it, because that's all the evidence. Like, the committee comes into a room on a Sunday afternoon and there's bins for each of the 7 standards with all the physical hard evidence that would support the standards and what the self-study is. They get an opportunity to look at the self-study and the survey ahead of time, but that's really all they get.
Okay.
So.
Interesting.
So so the due dates, there's the due dates for all the different standards. Those are self-imposed, recommended by NEASC, so that we hit our mark, so that we're ready to go and to have it ready for them by the end of the school year. So the part, having done this 3 weeks ago, for me, I'm not as old as Diane, so I've only seen 2.
Be careful, Steve.
I am way more gray. To be honest with you, going back, there may have been one the first year I was there, but I don't remember it. Even the 11 years in, it might have been another. There was definitely one that we were part of, but it didn't really mean as much to me then as this one will, one, being in a different role, and two, having gone on a visit and seen what it looks like on the other side. So just to give you a quick synopsis, it's basically there are 16 educators from around the state, or actually around the New England. The committee I was on, there was a woman from New Hampshire. The other 15 of us were from Massachusetts, but all over. There's 2 co-chairs, and the other 14 people, 2 people pair up per standard. And their job is to use the evidence we provide them, use the self-study and our online survey to write a report on how we're doing. And so every meeting I sat in from the other side of the table for the school I visited, I tried to start every meeting by saying, listen, because everyone sat around, much like maybe us when we walked in, nervous about speaking, they're wondering if we're going to, grill them and whatever the case might be. So I tried to start each meeting with, our job is to help you celebrate the things you're doing really well and help you identify the things that maybe you need some work on and maybe give you a little bit of leverage to get those things done. So on Sunday, they'll arrive. We'll have a big panel presentation. They'll have opportunities to meet with teachers and school committee and superintendent and administrators. And then over the course of, they stay in a hotel locally for 3 nights. They leave on Wednesday afternoon. And over the course of Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, they'll hunker down in a room in the high school where we provide, but they'll be shadowing students. There'll be set up meetings interviewing you as well as groups and small things like that. So they're just, again, all these interviews are from the lens of trying to collect information so that they can write a report, present it to their colleagues, and then the findings we don't get for a while. The committee chair will give us a synopsis on Wednesday afternoon before they leave. But I think it's really important for you to know, I think that's the piece that, as Greg said earlier, you're all going to be part of this. So it's their parents, students. It's an opportunity for us to show off what we're really doing well. And, I had a great visit, but I think there's a lot of things I learned that we're doing extremely well, better than this community, and maybe some things we need to work on.
I'd add this too. One of the things we were able to do this year, we were one of the first schools to go through our non-evaluative administrative walkthroughs. We hosted back, I think, at the October 1st. So for our focus this year, a lot of the surveys talks about 21st century learning standards. You heard Diane talk about it, Steve, a little bit. So we were able to do a little focus on the walkthroughs and do something different around our goal as a school is kind of how to bring those to life, show that we're all doing them in our classrooms, kind of have that connection to have evidence that we are doing them and hopefully get to the spot where kids can communicate what they are and why they're doing them. I think so our path this year is to kind of get there with the 21st century learning skills, but we were able to get the administrators to come in and give us feedback pretty early in the year as we start to kind of tease through it and kind of help us sort through what does a specific 21st century learning skill look like. So I thought we had a great day back on that Monday to kind of get some information for this process, but also kind of to celebrate some of the stuff in depth of work that we're doing now. So almost in a mini lens, maybe that has a correlation to this process, was helpful to us at the high school. So wanted to add that in there too, as we have that focus issue.
As part of the process, do you get to participate earlier? Like I know Mr. Nugent went to some community, right? Is that the norm that you would be invited to review a school before you get reviewed so that you kind of learn both sides of the table? Okay.
Yeah, I think once we identify who our leadership is, it goes into a database, and then they you get that email saying, hey, you've been selected to come, and they try and word it so that they pressure you not to respond no, and you kind of look for your ways out, and they're like, well, really, Steve's like, I can kind of do this one, so I know Kate's going on a visit, Diane went on one last year, Steve just went on one, and we have some of our, Scott went on one earlier in the year, and Brooke's going on one, I think, in a month or so. So we have a lot of people kind of in the mix, and some of our other standard chairs have got invited. And
it probably helps just to learn that other side.
Yeah, because I think when you come back and we can talk about kind of what people saw and a lot of it's highlights on your, their little details, signage in your building was one, we talked about coming back that you hear from, a lot of the stuff correlates to sometimes at freshman, 7th grade, 8th grade parent night or transition night when you have first time people come through. A lot of that feedback and things that you may hear you write down, and then if you have money in a budget or can work something in, you put it in there. But you kind of get a kind of larger comprehensive view from a visit, and it really makes you think about kind of some things you could do for your community, not just, again, your more narrow lens of maybe your 9 through 12 traditional lens. So it's very good information. We come back and kind of meet as a team and talk about.
So one thing I would just challenge you with is, obviously we'll start the budget process in kind of December, January. I mean, if there are things that we need that you know about, we need to know so that they can be appropriately funded.
We will bring them.
Okay.
Or list them as best we can with Dr. Gilligan to bring them.
Yeah.
Not to step over mine.
Just part of our, for example, the self-study, I've gotten a lot of information about this.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, not the self-study, my entry plan. And that's where in December, January, reserve the right to make a recommendation.
Yeah.
But more so even going forward with that full report is going to be critical. For this budget season, though, it is important to note there is a cost in terms of, we pay for the hotel and the housing and the meals. And I would say I've been on 2 visits, one under the new standards, one under the old standards. And so I applaud the teachers for doing it. It seems like it's a nice thing. I remember I just had my daughter the first time I went, and I was like, this is great. I'm getting out of the house. And I showed up on a Sunday, and literally, I only slept about 4 hours a night. You're trying to match up information in the day to match those self-study reports, but then you, as shared with someone else, have to write a whole section of the complete report. And I'm not kidding when I said I was like, oh God, I can't wait to go back to school and home. But it's a lot of work, and I just wanted to say that because I don't think you guys mentioned or emphasized how much work it is for you to go on these visits.
Are you sent all over New England as well, or?
I think when they narrow it down and you get that email, they give you choices. Yeah. So I think,
I didn't have a choice. I just got some.
You were special, Diane.
I have a question.
Hopefully it was somewhere good, like Martha's reading.
Yeah, right.
So it's clear that the passion you folks have for this, and you feel you're going to get a benefit out of it. What does the accreditation itself, the NEASC, what does it mean to our kids when they're applying to school? Do most high schools have this? Is this something that separates us?
It would probably separate us in a bad way if we didn't do it.
Yeah.
That's probably the easiest way to put it. Most schools do it. When I talk to representatives from colleges, as well as, and at NEASC, you can say they're drinking their own Kool-Aid, but when you talk about both sides of the table, there's so much value in being accredited and knowing that your students come from an accredited high school. And I think Gilly and Chet both pointed out, there was some turbulence back a few years ago, and a lot of school districts asked for an extension until things kind of got sorted out, and I believe they have. And so now I believe, at one point in time I was 50-50, having been on this side of the table and now going to be on the receiving end. I think there's a lot of value in it for our students and our families.
Yeah, I know back in 2007 when I first came around there, we went on warning, I believe, through that report, and it brings some attention, not necessarily positive around things too, but also I think some of the reports lead to some positive change too. So, but I don't think we don't necessarily want to go on probation or do anything negative, but I think you can get feedback and really do a more comprehensive plan around your goals and budgets, and then maybe a little more longer term based on a lot of the information.
That's exactly what I was going to ask. Based on going through this and what you're all saying, it makes me think of your being told to take the time that you never have time to do. Basically, you're creating a strategic plan for yourselves. It sounds like.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably pretty valuable for everyone. Is there any comparison to past evaluations, or does the committee that you were on, for instance, Mr. Nugent, or did you, as part of looking at that school, did you look at past evaluations, or it didn't matter, it was today?
No, we just looked at what they provided for us for that.
Okay, so there's no growth looking at, look how much we've gained in this area or anything like that?
Probably not. Maybe that might be more self-evaluation.
Self-evaluation, I'm just curious.
Yeah, because I think we'll have a report. I have the binder. I went through it last year, and I go through it kind of periodically now as we go through the process.
Yeah.
And that was 2007. So I think when this
Pretty
is
different.
done, you're going to get a 12-year lens, maybe in between. So it's changed. I mean, education's changed significantly since then, let alone North Andover High School. So
Right.
I think that we'll have that lens then.
What do you think are some of the positive outcomes that came out of the last process?
I mean, I had just arrived, so I think the process had just happened when I came as assistant principal. I mean, I may even yield that one to Diane or Steve, who've been there before, but I know just from my time going through her, I think the look at a more comprehensive, I know North Andover at that time was very heavily academic, you know, maybe in your math, language arts, world language, science, history, and I think for us to kind of look at, I know we've really exploded in different opportunities for kids, and I think that was a catalyst to kind of that direction as we went over the last 5-10 years. But
So the electives
Yeah.
and the advisory program.
Yeah,
I would
any advisory
definitely say
program.
that would be the biggest change since the last accreditation would be the type of curriculum, the expansion of courses that we offer. And also the advisory program would be another thing. Like Chad was saying, much more focused on just core curriculum before, and now we offer a broader range.
And is that the time that we changed to trimesters too? Is that what allowed us to have those
was after that,
elective
yeah.
opportunities?
I think we needed
So-
a different schedule to offer more electives. I think
Yeah,
I
I
can
mean-
speak to that.
One of the standards, they talk about community resources for learning. And really, to make some of these things happen, we had to invest more money in our high school. The high school had 4 or 5 different schedules, 4 different schedules in 4 years in order to accommodate kids, because in one year there was a $3 million budget cut prior to this. In 1 year, $3 million, $1 million basically at each level. So one of the standards in that community resources, I think that's when the schools in the town made a real strong effort to start working more together. And as a result, North Andover High School, one summer, as a result of this report, gained 8 or 9 positions. And it was in August, I remember. It might even have been a special town meeting. But it was a result of the NEASC that we gained those additional positions so that we could offer more electives, because at the time it was just the core curriculum.
So we wouldn't anticipate anything dramatic happening in the next 12 months when this is
No, I mean, not from what I look at now. I hope not.
good. That's great.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great.
No, I mean, I'll speak to these. We're just starting going through getting our information, but I think having a lot of people that have gone on visits, we've gone back and talked about it too. I think it's a time to validate a lot of the work that's been going on. And also, I think, again, get a fresh lens, because they'll have recommendations. I think one of the process is at the end of it, you get commendations, you get recommendations. It's not really framed in a way to put on a probation or take away accreditation. They're recommendations. So I think the change in the standards and the way they kind of operated has also been to more positive lead to change. It's necessarily been going through a negative way. So I think we're at the early stages of that. I hope it's an opportunity for really highlight a lot of the positive work we're doing and a chance to outline a plan kind of going forward. So.
And this isn't really about like the state frameworks or the standardized testing or any of that. This is really about what you're doing with kids.
Yeah, I think there's still the curriculum lens as it maps to a framework, and do you have curriculum is a part of it, but
Sure.
I think it's how it's implemented and how kids are able to identify what they're doing too. Because I think they shadow students and they're interviewing students too, so.
Great. Thank you.
And the shift in standards was really towards teaching and learning.
Yeah.
Prior to, it was leverage for communities to say, oh, your high school's crumbling, infrastructure,
Yeah.
go to the town and say, that was the leverage, and that's when they really made the shift right around. We might have had the new standards in '08 when they came, or '07, but that was the first year of the new standards. Because before, it was really just more of a political, like, you come to North Andover, you look at a high school with no walls, and say,
That was the first accreditation.
that was the first accreditation.
And we got a new school out of that one.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it worked out for North Andover, but it didn't work out for a lot of other
yeah.
communities.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
And I just appreciate these folks coming in. This is, I
Absolutely.
think it was really important to kick off the year with this. This is a huge undertaking. I'm really proud of the organization and the work that the teacher leaders are doing. And even, beyond this steering committee and all the work they're doing, there are leaders of each standard from within the building. And oftentimes, that's where you also grow leadership. I know a lot of folks who wanted to go on these visits and do things with, they might have aspirations to be a department head or a vice principal or all the different things. So it's good for the, I wouldn't say younger Mr. Nugent, I would say the less seasoned folks.
It's fair, it's fair. you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks for coming.
Mr. Jackson, if we could just ask you to stay for this next part while we
Uh-oh.
field trip.
Sure.
Are there any questions?
Sure.
That'd be great. So we'll move right now to the first reading of the Spanish exchange trip.
So I'll move.
I think we're just reading.
Oh, sorry,
It's
we're
just a
just
first
reading through,
reading.
sorry, okay. I thought we were on second, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's a,
We're doing new business first
okay,
tonight.
all right.
so-
I thought we were doing the band.
Yep.
I mixed the two, sorry.
That's all right.
So I have just a couple of things just to put out there. I think these trips are amazing. I love them. I think really impactful for students. And I think I've brought this up before, but I do have occasionally parents come to me and say that they're really concerned about what all this stuff costs. When it comes to the Spanish exchange, they get like 4 years to financially plan for that, and it's 2 weeks, it's whatever, $2,800, whatever it is. People can plan for that. Some of the music ones are big money annually, and while everybody loves them and I support them as well, I still worry about how much we're asking some families every year to spend on those trips. Parents don't want to say no to their kids. Kids want to participate. I'm not offering an answer. I'm concerned about the level of dollars that we're not mandating, but pressuring, and not even pressuring, but people don't want to miss out. Of course not. And it's incredibly, we've seen the kids come in and say that it's changed their high school experience. It's so impactful. I just worry about the dollars. And thank goodness for NAMA, because they raise so much money and do so much to support the music program, for instance. But as robotics grows, as the other things grow, I'm just really worried about how this is playing out. So I just wanted to put that out there as we all review these trips. No one ever wants to say no, because I think they're so important, but I am worried about the money.
Which students are going? Is it seniors, juniors, seniors, or is it just one
Spanish trip,
AP
it's-
class?
Most of the time, I think it's juniors and seniors. I don't have the exact list, I think, going through there, but I think it's there. They have to be juniors or seniors or through a certain level of Spanish.
Right.
And I think when they get to AP or Spanish 4, it's juniors or seniors, so.
And I know when I was a kid, I knew when I came in ninth grade, like my goal was to go on that trip
Yeah.
by senior year. So you can financially work toward that. But when you have some of these annual trips that are up to, $1,800 a shot.
And
it
if I can
scares me.
add something too, because I think those are tough. We have those conversations in the school.
I'm
I think
sure you
when
do.
we are, and I think the teacher leaders that are planning and a part of that are also cognizant of that. Because I think when we sit down with Lilith, with the music trips, with the exchange trips, DECA even every year kind of builds at a state level, and then they're successful, so you have an opportunity maybe at a smaller amount of people. You hope to have more to kind of go, and it's 3 days here. I think we look at it through the lens of where are you missing class too, because you have some crossover.
Right.
So I think it's hard for parents to make a decision, or even because the impact where it may be 5 days for a world language exchange trip, and then 3 days or something with Washington DC
Right.
in there. So it's when you plan them goes into them. So there may be a different trimester. I know for having a big trip, not to have a big trip every year, if you can plan a bigger and then maybe a smaller, more local trip,
Right.
if it's a trip that you want to do as part of your program. So we do have those discussions. I do think it's hard to be in a position to put someone to say no
Of
to a
course,
child on a trip. So,
yeah.
but I just so you know, at our lens of it too, they come in and the teachers are concerned a lot of times about kids missing class time.
Right.
So it's a huge balance
Right.
on there, because you want to make sure they have the opportunity, but you're aware of what the it's hard to say consequence, but sometimes there's a consequence, or you're working 2-3 weeks after the fact to really make up work, and it's your junior year a lot of
Yeah.
times, and that one that's heavy.
Yeah.
So
I think realistically, as as a parent who's looked at all these trips with my kids, you as a parent are going to say yes, and you are going to say no. I mean, in some way, having more trips and more opportunities means a lot of people are going to have to say
Make
no
choices.
to one thing or another, and so it makes saying no a little bit easier, because there are families that are choosing. I know one particular student that did go to Germany and on a music trip and robotics, I think, and junior year only went to like 3 days of school in April. And people make different choices within that. So I think that that's more acceptable, and actually I would raise that, that I talked to a parent this week about what was being offered instead of the outdoor trip for the 8th grade, and they were very pleased to hear that we were offering other things. So it's not as if school shuts down if
No.
students don't go, right? There's plenty of things to be occupied. And even if, if you're looking at some sort of a sports season, that would be impacted by going on a trip. So
That's true, too.
I am aware of the financial concern and of the pressures around that, but I also am aware that the families are really needing to make those decisions with all those things in mind. And the same thing happens with coursework. It might be that some AP class that you want to take is in conflict with some other specialty class that you're interested in, and we're making choices.
Right. Well, and those are the conversations I've had. I just felt that enough people have mentioned the cost to me that I thought I should mention it.
Yeah.
So
Might be a good time for a PSA on the live.
Lilith, dinner. That's right.
I just got my email today on it.
So,
They're not fundraising for this at all, right? Is it just their?
for Spanish trip,
Yeah.
I can't remember if it said
It
that.
didn't say it, just said,
I know the
20.
music trips, and I know a lot of the service
Yeah.
trips, the kids get opportunities to sell products to help defer their own costs. Yeah. No, I think
Okay.
that it's incredibly valuable as a part of the educational experience, for sure.
The one thing that always concerns me about this trip, and I know we've used Forum a number of times, is when you're housing students in family homes, that you have appropriate responses if a child felt uncomfortable in a home that they were placed in, or had any circumstance that perhaps their allergies weren't being accommodated or something like that. That there are some really clear practices in place for those kids to report to teachers and for teachers to be able to respond to that. Home exchanges are fantastic. They're just a great way for kids to be with families and to really experience language and culture. But screening of those homes and opportunities that, should something come up, that they can make adjustments and changes.
any other questions? Discussion? All right. Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thanks for letting us go a little early and letting.
No, absolutely.
Thank you too. Really appreciate it.
That was great.
Have a good night.
Can we do that, switch it to old and then back to new?
Oh, no,
All
that's
right.
okay.
All right, CIP budget.
CIP budget, first. Okay, I'm gonna have to work on because it's sideways on.
Where's the CIP
Yeah, you can
budget?
see this.
Okay, so this is the
We're working backward.
first reading of the capital improvement plan. And as we look through,
You know it's sideways, okay?
yes, yeah, that's why I'm looking on here.
We miss Jim.
We missed you.
So everyone go home like
Got it.
this, okay?
Well, I couldn't figure out how to change it either.
So when we're looking at facilities master plan phase 2, and we're starting to look at, what that's going to look like, that's a committee, and we've talked about representation on that, but in terms of Atkinson, Franklin, Kittredge renovations, as the part of the facilities master plan too. Also, I think it's important to note that we have not heard yet from the MSBA on the middle school project. We had found out last year, like the end, probably last day in September, for the first time, that we made it to the next round.
Oh, right.
To the top 44. So I got I was sitting with Cynthia Parrish Jeffers, the superintendent of Lawrence, last week, and she goes, "Oh, I just got an email about one of my schools. They've made it to this next round." So I called up MSBA, and I said, "I didn't hear anything today. Is that good or bad?" And they said, "No, we're one of 70 applicants in this first round, like last year." And they didn't come out this year or do extra work because they had been out last year and done all the review. And we should be hearing out of the 70 in the next 2 weeks or so. So I'll keep you updated as that goes.
Thanks for following up on that.
Yeah. And then in terms of the school IT, looking at that infrastructure and maintenance, the annual budget with that. And also with school maintenance, talking about district-wide paving, some of the drainage issues that they have to take a look at. Jim and I have been working closely with Andrew Mailer talking about these things. And I think it's really going to be important to determine with facilities master plan too. Jim's obviously always on that committee, but it's really important for us to figure out, what is the most pressing need, particularly with these schools in this order. So, and this wasn't necessarily the order of the schools.
I thought that was Franklin first, actually.
Yeah.
That's what we had talked about
Yep.
before.
So I wanted to mention that.
These are alphabetical.
That's right.
That's why I pointed that out.
Can I ask one question, sorry?
Yeah.
So under the maintenance and operations, would something, that's where I think the returfing happened last year? Was that under that line?
I don't know.
I can't remember.
I think it was,
Wasn't that community was?
Because that's all we did last year, I think, was the turf redo.
was that ours
Under
though, or was
facility
that
master plan.
towns?
No, wasn't that part of the community preservation? The
Oh, was
prep
it?
work was.
No, they would definitely not do turf. Community preservation doesn't believe in false materials.
Was it the site work, prep work?
Maybe, but I guess I'm asking just because, like, the high school baseball field and that JV soccer field, that's the Goose field. Would that fall under something like this, or?
It could.
That's a pretty big disaster at the moment.
It
So I don't know
could,
if
and
it's
I can get more information about how we funded the turf last year when Jim will be back
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Okay.
But I also think that, we also have to, there's a lot of moving parts with this. We have
Yeah.
the facilities we have the fields committee
Right.
plan.
Right.
And from what I hear, that it sounds like there's a varsity turf-sized baseball field there, softball, maybe soccer.
But it's not necessarily done for then the high school to go and use it at all times. I'm
Yeah.
not clear. But
Yeah.
I'm wondering if there were ever a need or a push for that baseball field at the high school and that Goose JV field.
I think
Is this
that
the place that goes, or is that somewhere else?
it may,
For
and
consideration.
It may, and I also think it's something we have to examine in terms of return on investment.
Right.
Coach Doolin does a great job trying to keep that up, but, it's really built on the old parking lot, which was adjacent to Kachikowick Brook, of the old high school. And I think there's some problems inherent just in the level,
Yeah, there are a
the
lot
way
of
it
problems.
is. So
Okay, just
I think
wondering where
I
it
think
fits.
I'd want to get an opinion from the town, from the DPW side, and from Jim Mealy
Right.
around. Is that something that we really want to continue to invest money in? If there are other available
Right.
options,
And it's not even that, I just want, like, were that to come up, is that
Yep.
the place it goes?
I do
That's-
think we need a new coyote because the geese have figured out that coyote doesn't
Yeah,
move.
the geese don't, yeah.
So,
I think you need a border collie.
yeah.
I have one.
But does that make sense to you about the baseball field? I think we really have to look at.
Right. No, I'm not, I'm just
But this
asking
could be
where
a place
where
for
it
it.
fits.
It
Right.
could be as well.
The discussion, okay.
Any other questions? All right. Back to our agenda. Do the chair's report. I only have a couple things. First, I want to say that the NESPA competition was terrific. The parent host did a great job putting that on, and the bands were outstanding, fantastic. I really enjoyed that. Second, we have the professional teacher status ceremony and Hall of Fame ceremony on October 24th. It's a Wednesday, 2 weeks from yesterday, 6 p.m. in the Rotunda at the library. And our honoree this year is Barbara McGovern. So it's a nice event. It's short. Come out and support our newest, are they tenured considered teachers?
Professional teacher
Professional status is tenured?
Teachers who
Yeah.
have been granted professional teacher status.
Right.
Which, it's a big deal.
Mhm.
It means we're making an investment in them and we believe in them.
And then my last announcement is on Monday night at the library at 7 p.m. There's a workshop called Go From Nagging to Coaching, Learn How You Can Motivate Your Child. I will definitely be attending this one. It involves anxiety over homework, power struggles over screen time. Emotions can affect motivation and hinder performance in children with learning differences. So it's co-sponsored with NAPAC and parent support for LD North Andover. And it's a parents-only event of children 11 to 16. So parents of children 11 to 16, but parents of all ages are welcome. I don't know if
You
that
said it's
means.
at the library?
Library at 7 p.m. And the presenter is Kat Marsh, who is a lead teacher and school consultant at the Commonwealth Learning Center in Danvers. All right. Do we have a school building committee update?
Just real quickly, Madam Chair, I kind of feel like we're on the 1 yard line and we just can't seem to get it quite over the goal line yet. Just quickly, the site work is still ongoing up there. We've talked about this in the past. We're trying to minimize as much work as possible during the school days, so that's obviously extending the time that they're going to be up there. And I want to commend Superintendent Gilligan and his whole team for staying on top of the contractor, because honestly they want to get out of there as soon as possible, and sometimes they're moving trucks and trailers when they shouldn't be, and unfortunately the superintendent needs to go out there and tell them they can't do that. So that is still something people see every day, and we still have a few more weeks of that. And let's be honest, the weather like today doesn't help. We've had a lot of rain in the last few weeks, and that puts a hindrance on it. As far as the building goes, I think they've knocked out the punch list. The only thing that really remains is the kitchen. We have a couple of items that are on back order. We have a little bit of a small change order that we had to do with regards to a prep sink that wasn't accounted for. So that's probably the last part that the general contractor, Triumph, is dealing with right now. So for the next few weeks, you'll see, people driving by, they'll see the site work still ongoing, and we're working towards it. Anything you want to add to that, Superintendent?
Yeah, I would just say that, I appreciate Andrew Mailer's help talking with him the other day to really get some work going, in the afternoons, 3 to 8, Saturdays, and if necessary, with Chief Gray's permission, Sunday. I mean, we'd really like to knock out any of that work around the building. And most of it is done. They've got some riprap to do in the back.
Right.
They've laid most of the sod and have it planted. They have one more walkway to pave. But we'll be pretty excited to get all of them off campus.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's been very patient. And as far as that goes, the internal work, the kitchen, Triumph is working. They're probably up there right now. I mean, they're working basically because some of the work they can't do during school days.
No, there's no way.
They just can't do it. So they're working like 4 to 10, 4 to 12. And they have plumbers up there and just trying to get this. Like I said, I see the end in sight. I just wish it would be here now. We all thought it would be. And as someone who's dealt with other, not school construction projects, but when you're doing a construction project, even your house, it's always like those last few things that just take forever to get done. Like, when's he coming back to finish this? When are we going to get it done? So we're very close, and again, thanks to the parents, the staff, the teachers up there for being very patient with the process. So I just know it's going to be fabulous when it's all finally done.
The teachers have made all the difference. There's wonderful things happening in those classrooms, and those teachers have really done a tremendous job. We couldn't do it without them. I mean, they have really gone above and beyond to make it a great experience for kids. And when I talk to parents, they said our kids are happy coming home.
That's right.
But I think everyone will be feeling better when we get all the trucks off, that type of stuff. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, on to old business. Vote to name the high school wrestling room.
What's this about again?
This guy.
That's a joke. It's been on our
Yes.
agenda for like
Yes.
6 months.
We have a long process.
So I will move that the committee, we don't have to have any open,
We've already done that.
we've already done all that.
Yep.
So I will move that we name the North Andover High School wrestling room in honor of Bill Chory. Am I saying that correctly?
Corey.
Corey. Okay. Member of the North Andover High School class of 1977.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McDevitt, second by Ms. Picard. Any discussion?
I would just say that obviously I'm appreciative of, I mean, they're not here tonight. They've come to every other meeting. The outpouring of support and the desire to get this done by a core group of townies is it's heartwarming to see them remember their classmate like that. So I'm very proud to cast my vote shortly.
Any discussion?
I would just say, I mean, I feel like this isn't really necessarily a naming, it's a renaming. And it actually is a little bit concerning that, we dropped it at some point in the new building of this. So, to Mr. Teresi's point, I mean, I really want to thank the members of the class of 1977 and Bill's friends to kind of continue to bring this up over the past couple of months to make sure that this gets done. So I think it's a great thing.
Yeah, and I'm really pleased that this committee had the foresight to put together a procedure for doing such things. Made it easier for us. Long process, but
Any editorial comments on that one?
No, it's detailed.
But thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, Mr. Teresi?
Aye.
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 And I'm an aye as well.
Hooray.
Right.
Excellent.
So what happens next? Do they put up that same
We have
plaque?
that nice plaque.
That's-
They
that-
they
They
said
have
they
it.
wanted to take care of it because they had something they wanted to change the name, because now it'll say wrestling room instead of field
Right.
house.
They just coordinate that with Principal Jackson? Okay.
Excellent. Congratulations out there.
Yes.
Second reading of the band chorus overnight field trip.
So I will move that the committee approve as presented in the packet the Nashville trip for the North Andover High School Band and Chorus.
Second?
Motion by Mr. McDevitt, second by Ms. Mably. Any discussion?
I think this is a great opportunity. What a musical place to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, great.
All right. Mr. Tracy?
Aye.
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 And aye. All right. Is there any public comment? Or Boy Scouts, thank you for attending tonight.
Yes, thank you.
And 2 kids will be going on a trip, so
Oh, great.
Awesome. Great.
let's see that it got approved.
Sweet.
This is the longest I think the Scouts have made it.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, do you want me to read it?
Are you getting your communication, or citizens
Do
and
you want
community,
to?
or both?
You want me to? I can mention it.
Good.
There'll be a test later on.
We've already told them that. That's fine. Okay.
And luckily for you guys, one of our shortest meetings, so
Yeah, right.
it's a win-win.
Yes.
No,
No stand tonight?
no stand. Does anybody have any last comments?
I don't know the details. I don't know if you can pull them up on the computer, but it might be nice to let the public know that the tickets, I think, are on sale now for the
Lilith
Lilith.
dinner.
dinner.
Your Learning Education Fund.
Yes.
It is
I want to say it's November 17th.
It is.
It is.
It's at Brooks. I forget the room, the
The Frick Dining Hall.
dining.
Frick Hall,
Thank you.
That's it.
I think tickets are $100 per person, or a table of 8 for $700.
Exactly.
But if you pay earlier, it's less, right? Is that what I
No,
said?
that's the what Andrew just mentioned is the kind of the deal.
Yeah.
Oh, I
If you
thought there was
get
something October 19th deadline.
if you get 7 friends, it's less.
Yes,
So that want to eat with you.
that's right. Good. Better start working on that.
Really? It's as bad as Nugent's comment to,
It's a great event. It gives. It's really helped. You know, we had a group in last year to say how much we've spent, and you heard last year. I think it was even, you know, Aaron Highland and a few of the folks talking about that experience.
Yeah.
It was. He sticks out. Like I was teary-eyed listening to Aaron. I've known him since he was at Thompson, but it was.
And I actually have a letter through Ms. Morley about this, but I think last year, the money raised at this dinner, someone went on the summer trip to the like geology trip. You're
Yellowstone.
Yellowstone trip. There were 2 that went to Montreal for the music, this chorus, and then 1 who went to Nicaragua were funded through that.
Wow.
So she uses that specifically in the invitation, I think.
Yeah.
So that shows directly how that money that is raised is spent, and it is a very fun night. And you
It's a
hear
fun
from
night.
students as well about their experiences. It's great.
I think Larkham Souls made a cake. I think I got a cake last year. I never cashed in.
Oh,
on
from the
that.
raffle?
Yeah. I
Oh, you
know.
should see her cakes. They're
Get
unbelievable.
one.
Yes, she's very talented.
Madam Chair, I just want to say congratulations on the very successful NAMS Geography Night, which was last week on Thursday. Very well attended, always an excellent event. And also for people to mark their calendars that the BRC, the Building Respectful Communities, which is the group that carries the RAISE values forward, we'll have a parent speaker on October 24th. His name is Jay Allen, and he's going to talk about social emotional learning. So information will be coming out on that. I know that's the same night as our Hall of Fame, but he's going to be here that day. He's going to work with teachers in schools.
Our leadership team, then our SEL teachers and then we're doing a presentation for elementary teachers and then secondary teachers. So we're very excited.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a terrific opportunity, and families can take advantage of coming to that too.
What time on the 24th?
October 24th.
What time?
Oh,
Usually 7, right?
I think it's, 7
At
o'clock.
the high school or the middle school?
More information will be forthcoming.
Fair enough.
But not before we meet again. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah,
Later the day after.
that's a good picture.
Did you hear that?
Pretty sure it's at the middle school meeting.
Middle
That was
school.
the last email I saw, so.
Okay.
The day event is, so probably the evening event as well.
If it's okay with Mr. Nelson.
Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add? Okay.
So I would move that we adjourn.
Second?
Motion to adjourn made by Mr. McDevitt, seconded by Ms. Mably. I'd like to point out we are way ahead of schedule.
Yay.
Mr. Treasy?
Aye.
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 And aye. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.